morning, Greater Purpose. I hope y'all had a wonderful holiday where you celebrated food and not genocide, because that's how we roll here at this church. But today, because it was a holiday week and because Mike and I did not get much of a holiday, we've been busting our butts to get this brewery done. We wanted to do something a little bit different so we could take the pressure off for the weekend. We have an exclusive interview with Brian Falduto, aka Fancy Pants from School of Rock, coming up for you right now in podcast format. We want to give you the podcast experience. We know that some of you have been gravitating that way because it's convenient, and today you get a podcast exclusive interview with Brian Falduto. If you don't remember him, he wrote the song God Loves Me Too a few weeks ago. We're going to talk about that and lots of other cultural issues. Hope you enjoy it. Grace and peace. Love y'all. Good morning, fam. How y'all doing? Welcome to the weekly live cast and to the sacred digital space where the lives of those on the margins matter and all identities are affirmed and welcome. Today, it's my honor to introduce Brian Falduto. You might recognize the name as one of the actors in the movie School of Rock, which happens to be one of my favorite feel-good childhood comedies. So very excited about that. Brian, I've got a audience here that's going to welcome you. Boom.
Amazing.
So Brian, this is very important. Possibly the most important question of the interview. You've had a long day acting. Your life has just been crazy in 2020 and you want to sit down and have a drink. What is your beverage of choice?
Ooh, I love a Manhattan.
Ah, good choice. I've got a.
But if I've had a long day, I'm not making myself a Manhattan. So that's more of something I would order when I'm at a bar.
I've got one that I make with Elijah Craig, and I use a little bit of a local brandy in it, and it's so good. I learned it from a local cocktail place. I'll send you the recipe. So
amazing.
Brian, tell us how you got into the movie business at such a young age. What's the story?
Yeah, the child actor thing was going on when School of Rock came along. I was just desperate for attention, and I just begged my parents to let me audition for things and get a manager and blah 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 blah. School of Rock was actually my second ever professional audition, so I did kind of strike luck pretty quick, but after that, not so much, because it's been, being an artist has its ups and downs for sure, and so it was an interesting experience to kind of strike success out the gate and then deal with everything afterwards that most people deal with right away. So it was very so that was interesting. And then the audition process was crazy. I had to go in 11 times to book this role, and it just taught me a lot about the audition process. It taught me a lot about casting and professionalism, and it was really nice. And then it was just obviously an unparalleled experience for a fifth grader to get to be in a major motion picture with Jack Black. It was very exciting. And then after that, I continued to act. I did commercials. I did I did this animated thing. I was up for a pilot for a TV show. I did a bunch of regional theater credits after School of Rock. So it was in the mix of a lot of things that I was doing at the time as a kid, but School of Rock was definitely the highlight, yeah, for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. And what comes to my mind is the chemistry that you all had in the film was just amazing. What was it like working with Jack Black and the other folks in the film?
Jack Black was amazing. He is still amazing to this day. He's very close with all of us and very supportive. I don't know if you saw the credits for the music video that I think we're talking about in this interview, but he funded it, which was very kind of him.
What?
And Yeah, he's one of the people who funded it.
Wow.
And yeah, and then as for like the vibe that we all had on set, that was just all really real. You take kids out of school and put them together for 12-hour work days for like 4 or 5 months, um, in this unparalleled experience to like the rest of your peers. Of course we're gonna bond over that in this like weird way because no one else we knew was like going through that. And then when the movie came out, there was like, just like a public thing going on for us that we kind of had to acknowledge, and we were supportive of each other throughout it. To this day, all of us have an active group text. It's actually hilarious. I would be really curious to see if any other movies still are as this in contact with each other because we text all the time.
That's awesome. That is so cool. I loved the movie specifically because of the amount of talent. And then you're also extremely talented as well. And we're going to get to that a little bit more in a minute. But I wanted to talk to you about this year. It's been a rough one for a lot of folks. 2020 has not been kind, especially with the coronavirus. And I was curious, what has the pandemic taught you about yourself as a person, and what do you think it's taught us about America?
That second half of that question is huge. What has it taught us about America? Wow. As first, what I've taken away from this time, well, I've taken away a lot of things, and I've had my highs and lows, just like everyone else. I'm highly introverted, so I don't think I struggled as much at the start of this as a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I conveniently, at the beginning of all this, was on a songwriting trip where I literally I purposely took myself away from my day to day so that I could be by myself and songwrite. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of all hit, and I was like, oh, how convenient. I'm isolated anyway, and I need to write. So it was kind of like, it gave me further permission to be creative for a little while. But then I came back to reality, and I actually moved, and moving during this time was super weird. And yeah, I mean, I've just been trying to pay attention a lot to like, what do I miss and what do I not miss? Mm-hmm. And anything that I don't miss from the way things were, I'm trying my best to not put those things back in my life as the world speeds back up. Mm-hmm. A lot of people keep being like, I want to go back to normal. And I think that's normal's just like always been a dangerous, scary word to me. And yeah, I don't think that the normal people are looking for necessarily will exist in the way that it did. So I think we should be really open to, either a new normal or just, I'm not sure that normal we were talking about was as great as everyone thought it was, because mm-hmm. obviously I think over this time we realized that there were obviously some huge faults there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good time to be like, what do we want to change? I think that the only thing constant in life is change. And mm-hmm. so this has kind of been a universal change that's unparalleled because we all get to experience it together. So it's just a really cool time to be like, what was working, what's not working, what can we do differently? And I think that there's a lot of people resistant to that, but there's also a lot of people who are like, I'm going to use this time to kind of ask myself questions I never asked myself before and look towards the future I never really imagined before, right? Because no one saw this coming. So it's, yeah.
Very good. Very good. That was a sermon, Brian.
Yeah.
that was awesome.
And then, yeah, and I don't know about America. I don't know. We'll see. America's doing its own thing right now.
That's true. And speaking of things always changing, as you mentioned, I am very curious about your faith journey. Like, did something change in your life? Were you always spiritual? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, religion has always been like a huge part of my life. I went to Catholic school. I grew up in Protestant church. So I kind of got a double dose of Christianity. And then, yeah, I mean, church is where I fell in love with music. I was in the children's choir, and I remember my choir director was like, everyone sing as loud as Brian. And of course I loved that attention. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a performer. And then, yeah, I mean, it was just, and I loved Christian music. That's where I fell in love with music, and that's where I first understood that you can like connect to something through music. You know, I remember moments where I would be singing a song and I would feel enveloped in something, and I was like, that must be God, you know. And yeah, so and then obviously, I mean, I'm gay. I'm an out and proud gay man. And I think a lot of people can relate to when you come out of the closet. There comes a lot of questions with that you ask yourself about, you know, the world you were living in before you kind of allowed yourself to be yourself in that world. So it's like, and you know, religion wasn't exactly, not really, the Christian church wasn't exactly like, we want to figure this out with you, or here's some options for navigating this tricky, oh, now you're out and proud. How do you also navigate this religion you've had your whole life? So I took a step back, like a lot of people do, and kind of just had no relationship with religion for just a couple of years. And then I wandered back into an LGBTQ inclusive Methodist church like 2 years ago, and was just overcome with nostalgia and emotion. And it was just so beautiful to see acceptance in the church, because I didn't know that was ever going to be an option for me, which is one of the reasons I distanced myself. And I just became I became excited that that's an option for people. But as far as my specific spiritual journey, and this has been a little interesting because I released a song like the one I released, and I feel like people assume that I'm really religious, but I feel more connected to God than I've ever felt, but I'm very deconstructed in my beliefs, in that I'm much more spiritual, and you know, I'm just always investigating and questioning, and I think that actually provides me a little bit more of an intimate relationship with the bigger picture, rather than just doing what I'm told, or you know what I mean. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's a very flowy spiritual journey that I'm on, but I still believe. Yeah, I'm still very much a believer.
I think you would fit right in at Greater Purpose. Half of my congregation is straight up atheist or agnostic, and they they get their spiritual fix from ethics. And I'm kind of in the same boat, you know, when I think about how I have had my own spiritual journey. When I am doing justice work or doing inclusive work in the church for the LGBT community and things like that, that's when I feel close to God. And the more I do that, the better. And I think the flowiness of spirituality and not necessarily falling in line with any one doctrine is what it's all about. I think you actually see that reflected in the scriptures. So that's biblical, in my opinion.
Yeah. One thing that I've been like, you said, you know, you feel connected when you're, you know, serving. One place that I feel really, really connected lately is like the closer I can get to myself, you know? I think that I feel like aspects of God or the higher power or the universe really exist within that intimate relationship with yourself. And I've been really into that lately.
Yep. I think there is something to the mysticism that was in Christianity, and getting back to that, I think, is important and beneficial in so many ways, like it has been for you. And I think your song was definitely a spiritual encouragement. It was uplifting, probably for hundreds of people, thousands. And I had no idea that you were such a good singer, because we really didn't get to see that showcased in the movie. So you've got this great baritone voice. I was wondering if you could tell us about the song God Loves Me Too, which was a great song. We played it at our church service a few weeks ago. Everyone enjoyed it. And I would just want to know the backstory to that. What was the inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that Methodist church that I was going to. So basically, I was in LA for a project, and I had never been to LA before, but I had to be there for 3 months. And so I didn't really know anyone. And so I had the weekends free. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with my weekends? You know, I was like a little just like bored. And I was like, maybe I'll venture into a church one Sunday. And so I Googled LGBTQ inclusive churches. And I found this Hollywood United Methodist Church. And I showed up one Sunday and there was this giant pride flag hanging above the double doors. And I was like, oh, how exciting. And I walked in and there was like a couple holding hands. And I think the pastor might have thought there was something wrong with me because I just sat in the pew and I cried for like an hour because it was more just like this. It was just, it wasn't even that I was like sad. It was just this overcoming nostalgia, you know? It was because that's where I spent so much time. I used to wake up at 5 a.m. every Sunday to lead 3 services as the worship leader, you know, and then I went to a Catholic school where I went to mass like multiple times a week sometimes, you know? So it was like very much, and it was just so nice to be able to sit down in a pew and so I ended up going back every week and having the pastor not only like have a pride flag above the doors, but also she made it a point every week to say everyone is welcome here. And then she listed like, you know, the different, like, it just felt so cool to hear that LGBTQ persons are welcome here. And I was like, oh, how awesome. And then I showed up one Sunday and there was a very solemn vibe in the congregation. And I was like, oh God, what happened? And then sure enough, the pastor got up and she was like, so we all know what happened this past week. And I was like, what happened? And apparently there was this vote in the Methodist Church, which I'm sure people know about now, where a lot of the LGBTQ and inclusive language was being voted to be reversed, right? And I was like, and it was so inspiring because she got up and she was like, but I will continue in this church to marry people of the same sex and welcome transgender people. And like it was really empowering because she was like, I don't care what the greater church says. This is what this congregation will always be. And everyone was like cheering her on. And I was like so inspired, you know, it was like this really powerful moment. But then I was also like, there's a kid somewhere sitting in a pew like I am. I'm getting a little emotional, but that doesn't know that this is going to be an option one day, just like I didn't know. Like there's a kid sitting in one of those churches that voted against this that needs to know that this church exists. And so I went home and I wrote the song in like 20 minutes. And it was so weird too, because it's very unlike a lot of my other music, but it was just like, this is something I feel like needs to be said. So, and then it was just from there, how do I want to say it? And then it felt like it deserved to be told in like a story form. So I thought it'd be a music video, and then that's kind of how that happened.
You know, the church has historically been in the front row wearing a We're Number One foam finger on the wrong side of history. And it does, it does my heart so much good to hear that fellow ministers are making this stand in their congregations, especially in denominations that are still wrestling with this issue and haven't crossed the line of justice for LGBTQ folks. And to hear that folks are still on that front line and fighting that fight, it makes my heart happy. And I agree with you. There's so many kids that need to know that there's a place for them. And there's there's so many kids that people of color, they need to know that there's churches that are saying your life matters, and there's so many people that adhere to scientific fact, and they need to know that that is not something that should be opposed in the church. And I think for a long time there were progressive ministers, but they kind of sat back and they were more calm in the face of the storm. But now we're getting louder, and it's what we have to do if this is ever going to change.
Yeah, a really exciting part of like writing and then attempting to release this song was just kind of learning all of the people who are fighting that fight, and all of the, taking a deep dive into the documentaries and the different organizations that are creating safe spaces for LGBTQ youth who want to still believe. And it was really, as far as like any project I released, it's been the coolest like marketing walk, because I basically was trying to learn about what this movement looks like if I was going to release a song like this. And it was both inspiring, and it was also like, I'm so glad to know about these options. But again, I didn't know about them before I went looking for them. So it's like, the goal is just to have more people feel less alone in that, I suppose.
And when this begins to grow, these ideologies that are far more positive and that oppose toxicity in the church, I think it changes society to an extent too, because such a large populace still identifies as Christian. So if we can change their perspective that's far from biblical, then I think it can absolutely heal American culture. You got to put in the work, you know?
Yeah. Well, the Pope just gave his thumbs up, so that's good.
Yes. Agreed. So this video that you released, God Loves Me Too, it was so encouraging to see for similar reasons that you just stated. The one thing that congregants in our church noticed is that the pants have remained fancy based on that video. And they all loved the pants, and my staff would just run me through the street tarred and feathered if I did not ask you where to buy them.
I have gotten a lot of comments on the pants. Yep, they were gold. So I don't actually think that they're for sale. I actually had to give credit to the designer in the credits, you'll notice, because like they were kind of like made for me. It was very exciting. I've never had that happen before. So I don't know that anyone can, but I highly encourage people to go look for them if they can find a similar pair.
All right. So the quest for fancy pants is on. It is on. So I'm just really impressed with everything that you've been doing, especially as someone that identifies as a progressive minister. And the message that you put out in that song was needed and still is. But I'm curious about other projects that you've got going on. What are some exciting things coming our way?
Yeah, so outside of music, I mean, I'm currently working on like a ridiculous amount of demos and I'm putting together like a next musical project. Outside of God Loves Me Too, my music is, I call it gay country. God Loves Me Too doesn't not fit in the description of gay country, but I usually don't have like highly like spiritual messages attached to my songs. My songs are just story songs based on my story. That's literally all I do. I just like take my story and I put it to music. So God Loves Me Too is very much a chapter of my story. And then I'm taking different experiences and putting those into songs. And yeah, so I call it gay country. It's country music, but it's gay. And awesome. I have a bunch of songs I'm working on, and I'm going to put together an album. I have other music out people can check out. Outside of music, I am a life coach. I don't know if people know that, but yeah, so I'm a certified life coach. I have a business that I run from home, and I also have my own podcast called the Gay Life Coach Podcast. And the goal is to bring mindfulness to the queer community. Essentially, similarly with the religious conversation we had, I didn't know that all these options for accepting yourself and loving yourself and healing were, because when you grow up gay and you like are told all these messages that you're wrong, you also develop like a bad relationship with yourself. And so it took me a while to sort of heal that relationship with myself and kind of understand that there are things you can do to heal your relationship with yourself. And once I kind of discovered those avenues, I became really passionate about them, and I wanted to help other people learn how to do that. So that's essentially the bulk of what I coach. That's
all something that I think I would be interested in checking out too, especially the podcast. I didn't know that you were a fellow podcaster, so I will be listening and taking notes. But Brian, this has been just such a treat for everyone that's listening, definitely for me. At some point in the future, we got to get you out to Santa Cruz. Our church sold our building a couple years ago, and we're building a brewery that is going to donate profits.
Fine.
Yeah, so we just purchased it a couple weeks ago, and we're remodeling. It should be done in about a week, but all the profits are going to be split with local charities, including an organization for LGBT folks. So we'll definitely have to get you out and get you a couple beers on me if that's your thing. But if not, I'll have a Manhattan waiting on you.
Oh my God, yeah, sounds so fun. I would love that. I'm in California from time to time. I don't really know exactly where Santa Cruz is, but I will find it and I will come, and I'm excited.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. And until next week, may the revolution of Jesus go with you wherever it may send you. May it guide you in healing this wasteland and protect you through the storm. May it lead you through this world, demanding the justice it has for you and for others. And may it bring you home once again, preparing to continue love's mission beyond your doors. Grace and peace to you.